Hi, welcome to Fall Read. I'm going to take a quick selfie, so if you guys can just kind of squeeze in a little bit. Um, my 14 Twitter fans appreciate that. All right, so welcome to Fall Read 2014. I am Dr. Thomas Reynolds. I'm an assistant professor over in language communications, taking English class next semester. They're good for you. And we are going to just read a little bit of our own work or from our favorite works that have to do with the theme of harvest. So I hope you enjoy. I would like to quickly thank the Department of Language and Communication, Northwestern State University Libraries, David Antilli, Arthur Dew, my co-organizers, Charlene LeBrun and Heather Salter-Drum, and Allison Rittmeyer and David West, and of course you for coming today. So thank you. We'll get started with Heather. So Heather, you're going to come up and introduce yourself, and then people, as you are going down the list and it becomes your turn, just pop up and introduce yourself, and we'll keep going that way. And once we finish, there are fresh baked in my way cookies that you should enjoy, fresh from Chips Ahoy. Yeah, okay. So here's Heather.
Okay, this poem is called In Autumn I Wait. I lost you in midsummer. You went away, taking with you my safe haven in your kind embrace. Now in autumn, I wait for you to return to me, here, as I sit across from your favorite chair, next to a plate of just-baked tea cakes, while the blackest coffee brews indoors. I close my eyes to summon an image of you, reading the Sunday paper, smoking a cigarette, and slurping sips from your cup. I strain my ears to hear your words of comfort and my soul to feel your touch. There is nothing but the north wind on my cheek and the sound of decaying leaves. I open up and the porch is empty.
Hi. Close enough? Okay. My name is Helene Rozovsky. I teach English. I'm reading Keats, To Autumn, because it seemed to me the most appropriate poem possible. Although I discovered today, shockingly, that I think Keats wrote this poem after having read a poem by William Blake entitled To Autumn, which has the same number of stanzas and many other things in common. But Keats's poem is better. To Autumn, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has o'erbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twined flowers. And sometimes like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river shallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft. and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Abney. I also teach in language and communication, do some other things too, but that's my favorite part of my world is teaching and writing sometimes, which I get to do. Now I have to set my little timer so I don't go too long. This is a story that I wrote recently as part of a longer set called The Many Blessings, and I had to cut it a little bit to make sure I had enough time to read it. There's only one term you need to know, and that's this term supply preacher that sometimes you hear in Southern Baptist churches where you have an interim preacher, they call him a supply preacher, so you need to know that before you hear the story. She hadn't really been paying attention as she drove down Highway 9. Her nerves were stirred up after running into that supply preacher, Brother Guerin, at the Dixie Crown. All she'd gone in for was some celery and cranberries that she left off the list. She was hoping to make a quick trip of this and not see anyone she knew. Harold, her newly dead husband, would have chastised her for forgetting the crucial Thanksgiving items. That thought left her, though, as she drifted back to Brother Guerin. Brother Guerin had unnerved her since that evening last year when he caught her in her nightgown letting out Harold's hunting dog, Ramsey. She'd hated that dog, and she felt about the same way toward Brother Guerin. She pondered the idea of a supply preacher visiting long-standing members of a church at 8 o'clock in the p.m. without calling first. She could have seen it if they'd been new members, but she and Harold had been at that church for 40 years, probably before that little upstart had been born. She scurried back from the door when she saw him drive up to find her pink chenille bathrobe to throw on. Then she returned to let him in, hollering for Harold to come to the living room. She offered Brother Guerin some cookies and coffee. He took them as if he'd never seen food before, and she remembered how he drained his cup, leaving not even a drop at the bottom. This had puzzled her. She'd never seen someone drink coffee and not even leave a drop, especially at someone else's house. He downed 3 cups in this fashion in short order. He was just weird, she reflected. She shook her head silently. No sooner had she finished thinking about the annoying Brother Guerin, who she knew she should love for Jesus' sake, than her mind drifted to Thursday, when all her kin would be returning from parts known and unknown for Thanksgiving. She dreaded having the burden of hosting this event, but there was no way out of it. Since Harold had died so recently, their family thought they needed to be with her. She did in a way, of course, but having her family with her never went quite as smoothly as she envisioned or wanted. Her grandchildren were grown and in that awkward spot between college and real life. One, Ellen, had pink hair and earrings hanging out of her lip and nose. They looked like earrings to her, but she was sure they called them something different nowadays. The other granddaughter, Megan, had a boyfriend who looked like he crawled out from under a log. He was always unkempt and a little scruffy. Who knew what her grandson would drag to the table? Last year he'd brought a tart. She was about 18 and barely over her age and barely dressed, much less barely dressed appropriately. He was 23 and he should have known better. After last year's mess, she hardly knew why they'd even come this year. She'd spent half the week last year making goodies for dinner, only to have it all ruined by the grandchildren bringing their doodads to the table and sending notes back and forth to their friends, who were probably ruining their grandmother's dinners too. Her children, Martin and Martha, would come with their lazy spouses to pile up in her living room, commandeer the remote control, and watch football all weekend. Martin's wife, Angeline, could be counted on to do nothing helpful. Martha might help her load the dishes or wash a pan, but forget Angeline. She said her hobby was football. Her real hobby was avoiding work. Harold would have been there watching football with them, too. She was glad that he was not, but guilty that he wouldn't be there. His last month had not been easy. Watching him struggle after his stroke to talk and unable to eat had just about killed her, too. All this occupied her so that she didn't recognize she was going 75 in a 45-mile-an-hour zone until she was jolted from her thoughts by an unwanted siren and flashing lights of Tommy Torbert's squad car. Good Lord, she said to herself. Now she had to deal with this. She knew Harold would have been on her about driving too fast, that's for sure. She remembered visiting Tommy Torbert's mother at the hospital when that little toad had been born. She hoped that he might take pity on her and not give her a ticket. She didn't want to squander money on that right now. She cranked her window down slowly and looked up with a faux confusion at Tommy Torbert. Well, Tommy Torbert, it's been a long time since I've seen you. What do you need? He chuckled at her and said, well, Miss Sims, you off to a fire or what? And she looked at him with another faux blank look and said, well, what do you mean, Tommy? And he says, well, ma'am, you were going 75 and a 45. You didn't know that? Well, my heavens, no. I surely did not. I guess I'm just out of whack since my husband, Mr. Harold, died. You knew that, didn't you? Tommy, sheepish in his forgetfulness, said, oh, that's right. I'm so sorry, Miss Sims. Now you slow down, and we'll just call this a warning. He winked at her. She smiled. Oops, sorry. I have to stop now. Okay, so I'll have to tell you more later.
Hey, my name is Bryce Moulton, and these are a couple of short stories that I wrote with fall in mind. First one's titled Here Again. Great, he's passing by again. I really don't like this guy. He's practically spitting out every word he says, and he hardly ever stays quiet when he is in town. He gets himself into fits sometimes, howling making you just want to stay inside. Other times, he really is quite quiet, but he whispers in my ear, and I always feel chills down my back when he does that. I'm telling you guys, he is crazy. He puts his hand to my windows and leaves fingerprints. Between you and me, I think he's a killer, too. I always have to watch where I'm driving. Also, I try not to let him catch me outside too long if he's around. But when he talks, you have to work to stay awake after a while. So, I guess the guy is pretty boring after that initial thrill. Oh well, nothing I can do about it now except put on a coat and hope that winter decides to leave soon. Second one is Tag. My feet fall in thundering thuds as I trample through the briars and saplings ahead of me. I hear him coming in a light-footed pursuit. I trip over a log covered by a thin layer of snow. My bleeding scrapes dye the snow a diluted red under my skin. I roll over and look around. I see nothing but the gentle snow falling between stoic pines. At second glance, I see him standing in the growing shadow of a dead evergreen. I try to stand, and I fall, feeling a pain in my ankle. He cocks his head, sending a wave of stringy black hair sideways. He gives me a lopsided grin with his thin lips. He taps the side of his pointed nose a couple of times and sends a wink over his high cheekbones. I start to crawl backwards as my breath quickens and fear grips my heart. I see his bony form slip off into the shadows of the approaching dusk. He's toying with me, and I know it. I manage to find a steady spot to raise myself off the snowy ground. My jacket smells like the decomposing pine straw and foliage of the forest now. I need to get home, and out of these woods before dark, or else I'll be in real trouble. I start to limp home as swiftly as I possibly can. I haven't seen him in a while, so I hope he's just given up the hunt. I glance at the driveway and see no cars. That means that Mom and Dad aren't home yet. I rush inside and lock the door. Every room that had a window or entrance, I lock or barricade. I sigh in relief. He can't get me now. I pour myself a glass of fresh pressed apple cider and grab a piece of pumpkin pie. I scoot the centerpiece, a pumpkin wrapped in red and yellow twine, out of the way as I set my snacks down. The scented candles layer the air with a blanket of cinnamon, but I still smell like the forest. I'm damp, too. I should get off this wet clothing so I can be warm. I hobble to the coat closet, tying my soggy jacket up. I notice a puddle of water poking out from under the door, along with shadows of shoes. I grit my teeth and hop up the stairs. I slam the bathroom door and lock it. I throw myself against the wall to keep it shut. I need to stay in here until my parents come home from the grocery store, and then this might finally end. Did I just hear a chuckle? I scream as he jumps out from behind the shower curtains, his hand snaking towards me. Tag, you're it.
I'm Sarah McFarland. I'm in the English or Language and Communication department, and I agree with Thomas. You should come take some English classes because we're the most fun on campus. This is Denise Levertoff. It's called Flying High. So much is happening above the overcast. Cloud poets, metaphysicians, essayists, fabulists of the troposphere, all at work. The material, their own metamorphic substance. Here, a frank exposition, suds you could wash your clothes in. There, an abstract brocade that loops and swivels in rivers of air. We glide low across a forest, league on league of trees in abundant leaf, but white, silver white, smudged with blue, tinged with pink, like peonies, an entire summer conjured in milky vapor, smoke of alabasters, slivers of pearl. league on league to a horizon more remote than Earth's horizons, fading now, curling, unfolding, imperceptibly flowing, the blush paling. Dense thickets migrate slowly across the fertile cloud savanna, browsing, and far aloft in the sky's own sky reclined the shepherd moon, propped on one elbow, watches the flocks of drowsy cloud lambs nibble their way out of being. For darkness even here is gathering. The lunar gaze dilates and begins to gleam, while our enormous Airbus, throbbing west and south, seems to tarry, fleck of metallic dust, in this firmament where dreamy energies sculpt themselves and winnow epic epiphanies.
I'm Kogan, and I teach stuff. Okay. I'm going to actually, harvest brings to mind home to me, so this is partly my work and partly some popular and professional work. It's called Ode to Home in 3 verses: deforestation, vilification, and obliteration. Upbeat thought for the day. Okay. I spent a good part of my early life in northern Wisconsin, the area 75 miles north of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is what I called home, is in the middle of the North Woods, not to be confused with the Great North Woods of North New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine, having gained great renown for hosting the annual World Lumberjack Championship in Hayward, Wisconsin. Deforestation. My grandmother, a quiet woman who always smiled, told me the local folk tales of Paul Bunyan and the loggers of the region. The one story about Paul Bunyan that I clearly remember concerns the Blue Hills and a logger named Shanty Boy. The tale begins with Paul Bunyan logging the area near Lake Superior during a year of 2 winters. During this interminable winter, Lake Superior had frozen solid. Paul Bunyan's loggers had cut huge chunks of ice, which Babe, the great blue ox, hauled up onto land. The ice would melt in the spring and fill the local rivers, big and small. The only timber left in the area was now on the Blue Hills, a great distance from a camp near Lake Superior. The trip to and fro was time-consuming and dangerous. The roads were non-existent or in disrepair, though Babe had no difficulty traversing the rough terrain. Paul Bunyan's men were frequently thrown from the sled or injured by the uneven ground. Paul decided to make camp in the Blue Hills, but the ground was so rocky and the water well was so deep that it took 1 whole day to hoist a bucket of water. Out of ideas, Paul talked a Shanty Boy, known for his resourcefulness, to a meeting. Late one night, Shanty Boy and Babe dragged the Blue Hills right up next to the logging camp. Paul and his logging crew were ecstatic about the deed. Soon thereafter, the remaining trees were felled, and the spring sun melted the ice chunks from Lake Superior, and Paul and his loggers were able to roll his logs into the lakes and rivers. Wisconsin is usually considered an environmentally progressive state. Despite its concern for the environment, Wisconsin was 50 years too late to stop the rape of the North Woods by lumber barons in the latter half of the 19th century. While the timber industry was instrumental in the economic and population growth in the region, its departure from Wisconsin's woods left a desolate landscape for impoverished families, sluggish local economies, and millions of stumps and brush piles. The graves of loggers who lost their lives in the logging camps are strewn throughout the area. Vilification. At the turn of the 20th century, the timber industry moved westward after deforesting much of the North Woods of Wisconsin, and local economies collapsed from its withdrawal. The clearing land had been claimed for farming by a new wave of immigrants coming to the United States from Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, as well as young families from the Midwest looking for cheap land. Northern Wisconsin, the vast majority of its natural resources plundered, was touted as a poor man's paradise. The local media, merchants, and bankers, having lost a major industry, promoted this land as incredibly profitable. The push for agriculture in northern Wisconsin was articulated by the Secretary of Agriculture, James Wilson, who declared the region would be a great agricultural country. Despite state and federal assurances, no real assessment of the region's farmland was ever undertaken. Much of northern Wisconsin farmland at the time was only marginally productive. In response to the media and favorable credit with which the thousands bought land and moved to the region, the new settlers soon learned that the farmland was not ideal. Within 3 decades, the families of the region that were lured there by the possibility of independence and a piece of paradise were being reviled by the very agricultural experts, state and national politicians that had earlier lauded them as new pioneers. These farmers, referred to as criminal, immoral, and a drain of society by the state and national media that held these small networks of farms together, finally collapsed. The marginal nature of the land, as well as the changing policy, zoning, and the formation of state and national parks, drove many families off their land in the 1930s. 75 years later, the failed farms of northern Wisconsin are being slowly absorbed into the woods ravaged a century before. The communities primarily dependent on agriculture are slowly disappearing as new communities develop around new manufacturing, service, and tourism centers. The poor man's paradise in northern Wisconsin was an abysmal failure. The paradise propagated, reviled, and eventually destroyed by local, state, and national politicians, along with the family and community cohesiveness that kept it together, has left its dilapidated ruins strewn throughout the region as a reminder of myopic concerns on profits and its consequences. My home, the dairy state, has few cows and fewer farms. Beautiful and rugged, this region is slowly reverting to wilderness. Some efforts have been made to maintain family farmlands cleared a century ago, but they have largely failed. The children of those farmers have long ago forsaken the difficult and only marginally profitable profession of farming and have left for Madison and Milwaukee and Minneapolis. In the last 20 years, lake cottages for people escaping urban life have largely supplanted the farms. Beautiful mansions dot the numerous lakes in the region as farmhouses and accompanying buildings have fallen into disrepair or been overrun by the stubborn grasses and prolific trees of this part of the country. The lakes are becoming self-sustained communities fortified by wooden fences and brick walls against nature's encroachment on their manicured lawns. Meanwhile, outside the palisaded lake walls, the indigenous wildlife has returned. Wolves, black bears, moose, coyotes, while being observed only occasionally, frequently cause mischief for the few remaining farmers.
My name is Marcia Hardy. I am in the School of Business and a new faculty here at Northwestern, and I'm delighted to be here. And this is the first time I've ever read anything in front of someone that I've written. And now I'm feeling a little bit nervous. My palms are sweating, so just bear with me as I do my best to be okay, all right? Thank you. The name of this poem is called One Last Show. I wrote it on my birthday, and it's very special for me. It's for my children and for you all to hopefully to enjoy this evening. I have waited, oh so long, for the wondrous fireflies to return to my pond. Making a point not to mow fields or cut down trees, I plant wildflowers and leave brambles to grow alongside my weeds. And I admit, my neighbors do not approve or agree. I am sorry for this overgrown tangle, and I know what you say, but for a chance encounter with magic, I must do it this way. You see, during the months of May and June, I stop mowing the walkways and I wait for the moon to wake up and reveal its silvery light, the most magical, marvelous twilight sight. I squint up to the heavens and peek down at the earth, searching for any tiny light burst. If I look too closely, I mistake twinkling stars for the magical miracle of fireflies afar. A small flicker appears to my left and then to my right, and off again and on again and on again and off again into the night. I squeeze my eyes closed, then open them wide to make sure what I think I see really flew by. Did I see the small blink of light dart side to side, forward, now backward across the gray sky? Then to my amazement and surprise, I do see one random starlight flicker, followed by two, now, oh yes, three. Childhood memories race with me from backyard, field and beyond, through the forest, now the front yard, the night garden and the pond. With the frogs croaking and the crickets singing and the night sky aglow, I'm now certain I see the tiny fire flow. What joy, a child's pleasure to discover and cheer as I dance gleefully. Yes, they are here, they are here. What a fun time, night romp, jump and play. Then I ask in a quiet voice, how long will you stay? They hear me and whisper, you know, not long, before our firelight beauty disappears and is gone. So you see, as life's light dims and fine lines start to show, there are very few earthly pleasures I still wish to know. Yet one certain pleasure I have waited for so very long is the return of the wondrous firefly to my pond. The fantastical, unforgettable fireflies that I adore gather to dazzle, bless, and amaze me once more. A wondrous night treasure, a spectacular fire flight this will be. Maybe my last show? Time will tell. We shall see. While I wait for his answer, share this magic with me? Thank you.
I'm Dorothy Jones, and I teach in the Criminal Justice, History, and Social Sciences Department. And I'm going to be reading tonight from a series that I've created called the Eddie and Sassy Mysteries. It is a book series for children, ages 9 through 12, and it's about two young pups who are very adventurous siblings who basically solve mysteries. They are, as I said, adventurous, and these adventures take place against a southern backdrop, and I think that some of you are probably going to recognize the backdrop in this one. Although I might drop a name here and there, but I do that basically because when you're writing, you want your fluidity to go, so you will put the name in there and you'll keep the name until maybe the editing comes, okay? So here's Eddie and Sassy in The Great Christmas Lights Caper. It was a crisp, cool winter morning on the Cane. The wind blew gently off the old river that spiraled through the heart of the small town of Natchitoches. The river, lined with large magnolias and live oaks, was the perfect backdrop for the town's historical Main Street. It was paved with red brick that had been laid brick by the early settlers over 100 years before. Along Main Street were a string of boutiques, a pub, a toy store, a mercantile, a couple of restaurants, a book merchant, and a bakery where you could smell the bread for miles. Old Mr. Marseille had been baking his culinary delights for over 35 years. He opened the shop at 5:30 a.m. sharp every morning. Rain or shine, he never missed a day. Years ago, the cane was used to carry cargo to and from the neighboring towns. Everything was transported on barges or by canoe. Today, it was a kinder and gentler cane, a lazy river that now played host to canoe races, fishing tournaments, and holiday barge parades. Through the years, it had also become a perfect nesting place for wild geese and ducks. Eddie and Sassy walked along the banks of the Cane as they did every Sunday morning. The wind was chilly, but the sun's rays were warm and soothing. And for Eddie, it was a great place, a great day to just lie in the grass and take a long, quiet nap. Natchitoches was known for those long, lazy Sunday mornings, and Eddie was not about to miss out on bathing in the warm rays of the sun. He yawned and began to stretch out on the grass as the wind stroked the water, slowly moving it along like a well-sung lullaby. Suddenly, a loud honk came from the edge of the river, and the pups were startled from the squawking and flapping of wings. "It's that crazy pack of geese," Sassy said, annoyed by the sounds they were making. "What's gotten into them?" Eddie asked, now standing up straight on his back legs. Before she could answer, Sassy raced to the foot of the grand old magnolia that sat on the river's bank. "I don't know, but I'm going to find out," she said as she peeped around the side of the old tree and stood up along its trunk. "You go ahead. I got something else in mind," Eddie said, digging his claws into the soft, cool grass. "Yes, this will do just fine." Eddie was completely unaffected by the commotion. Besides, everybody knew geese were just a pack of busybodies. He could sleep through a train wreck, Sassy thought, as she positioned herself for a surprise attack. I'm going to teach those geese a little lesson on who's the boss on the cane. She crouched down so that she could barely be seen behind the huge trunk of the old tree. Suit yourself. I'll be here when you get back, Eddie said, yawning again and lying full stretch on the ground. Just then, Sassy ran to the water's edge and lunged toward the geese and separated them. They squawked even louder, and feathers flew everywhere like a down pillow broken in the wind. Lenny Goose. Sassy recognized the old goose as he tried desperately to gain his composure. She found herself facing toe-to-toe with her apparent nemesis. Lenny cleared his throat and dusted off his feathers. That's Lene to you, he said, almost under his breath. What are you and those stooges making all this fuss about? Sassy asked, ignoring his obvious correction. Sassy, ma chérie, quelle surprise, he said in his broken French accent. I'm delighted to see you again. Please, what are you screeching about? She asked as she stared down the old goose, slowly sashaying around him, making him more and more nervous at each turn. Sassy suspected that the gaggle had been wailing, as they often did when they had wind of some type of upcoming news. They were often more regular than the Sunday paper, but not nearly as reliable. It would be my pleasure to tell you, but then I would have to kill you, he said, trying to take his leave of her quietly to avoid any further confrontation. If I thought you had any news worth giving, I wouldn't have any trouble getting it. Sassy pounded her right paw next to the ground where he stood. She knew exactly how to rustle that old goose's feathers. That is what I've always liked about you, Sassy. You know what you want and how to get it. But I haven't the time to play your little puppy games. I have important business at the mayor's office. He tore past her paw, making his way around the old tree. Sassy ran effortlessly behind him. Not so fast, Frenchie. I smell something fishy here, she said, now pouncing upon the old goose and pinning him under her front paws. You will tell me what I want to know, won't you? I'm growing quite impatient, she said, as she dug her paws in a little deeper. Wild horses couldn't drag it out of me, Lenny screeched as sweat popped off the old goose's forehead like popcorn in a popper. Sassy extended her claws and Lenny began to break under the pressure. The mayor is planning a big surprise for the Christmas festival. Oops. Is that a fact? What did he say? Sassy released her grip momentarily, only to apply a bit more pressure. He didn't say what, just that there would be an unveiling in the middle of town square next week. Lenny sighed, a sense of relief. Next week? Oh, this must be serious. Thanks, Lenny. It's always a pleasure to do business with you, Sassy said as she released him. She knew that if he knew anything more, he would have told her. That's Lene to you. Lenny slowly picked himself up and adjusted his wrinkled feathers. Look at the time. I must be going, he said shakily, walking away and mumbling something to himself in French. Meanwhile, Eddie was waking up from his nap and feeling a bit hungry. Sassy rushed over to him, almost knocking him down. Eddie! Eddie! Sassy shook him. The mayor is unveiling some secret in the middle of town square next week, she said, all in one breath. I wonder what it could be, she added with a distant look in her eye. Hey, whoa, slow your horses. And this information you received from a loudmouth goose? He's never gotten a story straight in his life. I know, but I just have so much fun getting it out of him. Smell that? Eddie took a giant whiff out of the morning air. Old Mr. Marseille's bread. I could almost taste it. The pups enjoyed Mr. Marseille's bread almost as much as they enjoyed Sunday mornings on the cane. Come on, I'll race you up to the top of the steps, Eddie said as he dashed to the foot of the stairs that led up to the main street. You got it, Sassy said, brushing past him and zipping up the steps. I wonder, she said, now perched on the sidewalk at the top of the steps and looking down at Eddie, what if the mayor really is unveiling something? Eddie was almost out of breath as he made it to the final step. Sassy, you are much too trusting, he said, trying to catch his breath. Who said anything about trust? I just like a good adventure. I love Main Street at Christmas time. It's so festive and peaceful, Eddie said, sitting back on his hind legs and taking a quick rest. It's like no other time of the year. Well, you'd better enjoy it now, Sassy said. Once the festival days begin and they arrive, there will be no more peace and quiet for weeks. Tourists, the pup said, simultaneously as they headed for the bakery across the street. Thank you.
Hi. I hope this works out up here. Or down here, I should probably say. I have 2 poems for you. They're both relatively short, so I'll read the first one, and if you still like that, it's themed with family, because when I think of fall, I think of my family. And, you know, sometimes we inherit the good things, and other times maybe they're not so much. And this one's going to talk about a family who is kind of struggling with that. So, second poem is much happier, I guarantee it. It's called Hand-Me-Downs by Sarah Kay. I know you've taken to wearing around your father's hand-me-down anger, but I wish you wouldn't. It's a few sizes too big, and everyone can see it doesn't fit you, makes you look silly, and it hangs on all the loose in all the wrong places, even though it does match your skin color. I know you think you'll grow into it, that maybe your arms will beef up after fighting, and it will sit on your shoulders if you pin it in all the right places, with well-placed conviction. The bathroom mirror tells you look good in it, that it makes your fists look a little more justified when you dig them into your pockets, where hopefully you'll find your father's hidden stories left in there for you to hand out to the other boys like car bombs. And on days when everything else is slipping through your fingers, this you can wrap yourself inside of. This will keep you warm at night, help you drift off into sleep with the certainty that no matter what, it will still be there when you wake up. And the longer you wait, the better it will start to fit until some of the stories will start to become your own. Maybe the holes in your sleeve are from the bullets you dodged yourself. So when it rips and snags on barbed-wired fences or someone else's family, don't worry. Because your mother and your sister will help mend it, patch holes into it, and sew it into it their tears. Replace a button or two, and help you back into it to tell you how proud they are of you and how good it looks on you. The same way it looked on your dad and your granddad, too, and his dad before him and his father before him. But back then, there was only sand until someone drew the line, till someone built the wall and someone threw the stone. And that crack in the skull that it hit fractured perfectly outwards, like twigs on branches on the limbs of a family tree. So someone threw a stone back then, and with each tiny break, a thread wound itself together and pulled itself around him, your great, great, great somebody. And on the other side of that wall, they were knitting just as fast, and theirs fit them just as well, but maybe in just a slightly different color. So I'm asking, when the time comes, who's going to be the first one to put down the needle and thread? Who's going to be the first one to remember on that their grandfather suffered just as much broken windows, broken hearts, and broken bones that you did? And when that first time comes, when you'll come down to Thanksgiving dinner and see your son sitting at the dining room table with your hatred on his shoulders, who's going to tell him it's finally time to take it off? Want to hear another? Yeah. Okay. This one's a little happier. It's called Hands. People used to tell me that I had beautiful hands. They told me so often, in fact, that one day I started to believe them. Until one day I looked at my photographer father and asked, "Hey, Daddy, can I possibly be a hand model?" And to which he said, "No way." I don't remember the reason he gave me, and I probably would have been upset, but there were far too many stuffed animals to hold, too many homework assignments to write, too many boys to wave to, many years to grow. We used to have a game, my dad and I, about holding hands, because we held hands everywhere. And every time, either he or I would whisper a great big number to one another, pretending that we were keeping track of how many times we held hands. That we were sure that this one had to be 8,002,753. I love hands, like I love people. There are maps and compasses with which we navigate our way through life. Some people read palms to tell your future, but I read their hands to tell your past. Each scar makes a story worth telling. Each calloused palm, each cracked knuckle is a missed punch in the years of factory. Now, I've seen Middle Eastern hands clenched in Middle Eastern fists, pounding against each other like war drums. Each country sees their fists as warriors and the others as enemies, even though fists alone are just hands. But this is not about politics. Hands are not about politics. This is a poem about love and fingers interlocked like a beautiful zipper of prayer. One time I grabbed my father's hand so that our fingers interlocked perfectly, but he changed position saying, "No, that hand holds for your mom." Kids high five, but grown-ups shake hands. You need a firm handshake. Don't hold on too tight. Don't let go too soon. Oh, definitely don't hold on too long. But hands are not about politics. Urgh! When did it become so complicated? I always thought it was so simple. The other day, my dad looked at my hands as if seeing them for the first time, and with laughter behind his eyelids and with all the seriousness a man of his humor could muster, he said, "You know what? You've got cute hands. You could have been a hand model." And before laughter could escape me, I shook my head and squeezed his hand. 8,200,754.
I'm Julie Kane, and this spring I'm going to be teaching English 3300 creative writing, Wednesday nights 5 to 8, hint, hint. Okay, and despite being descended from a long line of Irish potato farmers, I don't seem to have any harvest poems of my own. So I'm going to read two by Robert Frost, who's one of my favorite poets. This one is Gathering Leaves, something I think we're all doing this time of year. Spades take up leaves no better than spoons, and bags full of leaves are light as balloons. I make a great noise of rustling all day, like rabbit and deer running away. But the mountains I raise elude my embrace, flowing over my arms and into my face. I may load and unload again and again till I fill the whole shed, and what have I then? Next to nothing for weight, and since they grow duller from contact with earth, next to nothing for color, next to nothing for use, but a crop is a crop, and who's to say where the harvest shall stop? And this is after apple picking. If you've ever done a repetitive activity all day long and then dreamed about it all night long, you can identify with this poem. My long two-pointed ladder's sticking through a tree toward heaven still, and there's a barrel that I didn't fill beside it, and there may be 2 or 3 apples I didn't pick upon some bough. But I am done with apple picking now. Essence of winter sleep is on the night, the scent of apples. I am drowsing off. I cannot shake the strangeness from my sight I got from looking through a pane of glass I skimmed this morning from the drinking trough and held against the world of hoary grass. It melted, and I let it fall and break, but I was well upon my way to sleep before it fell, and I could tell what form my dreaming was about to take. Magnified apples appear and reappear, stem end and blossom end, and every fleck of russet showing clear. My instep arch not only keeps the ache, it keeps the pressure of a ladder round. And I keep hearing from the cellar bin that rumbling sound of load on load of apples coming in. For I have had too much of apple picking. I am overtired of the great harvest I myself desired. There were 10,000 fruit to touch, cherish in hand, lift down, and not let fall, for all that struck the earth, no matter if not bruised or spiked with stubble, went surely to the cider apple heap, as of no worth. One can see what will trouble this sleep of mine, whatever sleep it is. Were he not gone, the woodchuck could say whether it's like his long sleep, as I describe its coming on, or just some human sleep. Thanks.
This is just a little poem I wrote. It's called Fall. In the dark of summer, we drove like mad and fell into the sky, swimming through constellations, diving deep for stars. Each time we came back up empty-handed. Now we watch the river while it rains, waves like TV static, gray and unfathomable. Our clothes are soaked through. In my head you kiss me, in your head I don't cry. We chase airport lights like fireflies and hope to keep them, but they flicker, die. We lose interest, move on. In the chill of November, we play tag across the highway to keep ourselves warm, screaming our invincibility. You disappear, I panic, we fall apart. Your face appears across the road, on the other sides of cars. We were never together at all.
My name is Elizabeth King, and I'm the president of Brainiacs Poetry Society. And I'm actually going to do a poem I wrote today called Harvest. Okay. Seasonal trilogies sow seeds into the hearts of the groundspeople who plant their hands deep in the soil, and they pray for their dirt to be purified in holy waters. Growth has been stunted, women won't bear fruit, and men devour their game when howling at the moon. The summer that warmed the hearts has gone too soon. Now the leaves are leaving, requesting their right to righteousness and freedom from the trees, place themselves beautifully on grasses green. Branches stick together, procrastinating against lumberjacks and their future coffee tables. Souls blacken but consider themselves the cream of the crop, whistling sad songs from the boiling pots. The wind blows a chaos of falling rainbows to the mouths of rakes who grind their teeth with self-hate. What happened when the night comes too soon reflects the earth with a harvest moon. Trees grieve for their leaves when town folks forget what gathering really means. Crops become a poor man's dream, and growth seems to be the farthest thing seen. You witness a shortage of faith in people with a face of autumn doomed to fall.
Hi, my name is Olivia Adams. I'm the Argus editor-in-chief, and I'm also the vice president of BAPS. And I wrote this poem also today, and it's called A Dreamer's Harvest. I think myself grounded, so I plant seeds, fold them in fissures, and wait. Dreams germinate with the warmth of sun. Sweat and tears are enough moisture to get the job done, waiting, as if every field is a hospital room, beginning anxious, slowly transforming into a psychoanalyst. I wonder what governs judgment. Prefrontal cortex says nothing is what it appears to be, but the amygdala tells me to cling to hope and exceed, a sign. Some notion of permanence is needed to proceed through winters of adversity. Frosty breezes chill aspirations. Leaves reminisce on fruitful summers, springing change into view. Change never grew. Seasons transition, but minds refrain to follow, as if maturity is the nutrient we fail to swallow, as if generations are destined to absently exist today, not attaining reinventing tomorrow. Time dissipates, and financial thorns choke imaginations. Start the vision over again to realize reverie costs too much. Lower standards. Have hearts handed back, retract tractors of intelligence, reap nothing after sowing for half a lifetime. Life is acid rain. Survive the shower, become stronger than the former self. Through tragedy, resilience is born. Exchange gears rusted from negligence and replace with tenacity. Trust in what eyes cannot see. Harvest in faith, knowing autumn is always the time to receive.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew. I'm also the second vice president of the Brainiacs Poetry Society. I wrote this poem over the summer, and it's in dedication of a relationship that never started. I dug into a garden for rustic treasures, to fashion my desires out of fruits and vegetables. Scarecrow, Medusa, crop dusters low. Off divine vines I'm choosy, so I pick my love slow. Not cash, just nourishment live and direct from the soul. Soil slick seeds have seasonal siblings that sing, plant us and we will grow. Wedding vows, church bells, the 9 yards of a lifetime. I'll be yours for infinity if you promise to be mine as long as the sun shines. Thank you.
I'm going to read 3 very short pieces. The first is the beginning of Whitman's A Carol of Harvest for 1867. And here Whitman is celebrating not only the idea of harvest, but the idea of the first harvest post-Civil War. And so the excitement of being able to lay on a field that actually, from where you harvested bounty and rather than dead bodies. But I'm just going to read the beginning, which is more happy and Whitman-esque. A song of the good green grass, a song no more of the city streets, a song of farms, a song of the soil of fields, a song with the smell of sun-dried hay where the nimble pitchers handle the pitchfork, a song tasting of new wheat and of fresh-husked maize. For the lands, for these passionate days, for mystery, now I a while return to thee, O soil of autumn fields, reclining on thy breast, giving myself to thee, answering the pulses of thy sane and equable heart, tuning a verse for thee. O earth, thou hast no voice, confide to me a voice. O harvest of my lands, O boundless summer growths, O lavish brown parturient earth, O infinite teeming womb, a verse to seek, to see, to narrate thee. And this semester I'm teaching an introduction to literature class where we're focusing on the beat poets, and Ginsberg is certainly the poet most influenced, I think, by Whitman's style. And so I'm going to read a little bit of what I read as a harvest poem written by Ginsberg, who desperately wants that kind of relationship that Whitman had, reclining in fields, and didn't or couldn't get it, couldn't make himself get it even when he could get close to it. What thoughts I have of you tonight, Walt Whitman, for I walk down the side streets under the trees with a headache, self-conscious, looking at the full moon. In my hungry fatigue and shopping for images, I went into the neon fruit supermarket, dreaming of your enumerations, what peaches and what penumbras, whole families shopping at night, aisles full of husbands, wives in the avocados, babies in the tomatoes, and you, Garcia Lorca, what were you doing by the watermelons? I saw you, Walt Whitman, childless, lonely old grubber, poking among the meats in the refrigerator and eyeing the grocery boys. I heard you asking questions of each. Who killed the pork chops? What price bananas? Are you my angel? I wandered in and out of the brilliant stacks of cans, following you, and followed in my imagination by the store detective. We strode down the open corridors together in our solitary, fancy, tasting artichokes, possessing every frozen delicacy and never passing the cashier. Where are we going, Walt Whitman? The doors close in an hour. Which way does your beard point tonight? I touch your book and dream of our odyssey in the supermarket and feel absurd. Will we walk all night through solitary streets? The trees add shade to shade, lights out in the houses. We'll both be lonely. Will we stroll dreaming of the lost America of love past blue automobiles and driveways, home to our silent cottage? Ah, dear father, graybeard, lonely old courage teacher, what America did you have when Karen quit poling his ferry and you got out on a smoking bank and stood watching the boat disappear on the black waters of Lethe? And finally, my response to Whitman, and I'll just, because I don't know anything about harvests either. A song of the golden great arches, a song no more of the rural fields, a song of restaurants, a song of neon supermarkets, a song with the smell of unripened fruit, where the agile checkers check the prices, a song tasting of bleached flour and of high fructose corn syrup. Oh, Walmart, heed me, my voice. Well, that's going to wrap up Fall Read. Once again, thank you all for coming, and definitely on your way out, even if you don't want to sit around and talk, which you should do, we should all gather so we remember what gathering's all about, right? And chit-chat, but eat some cookies or take them in a napkin with you, because otherwise I'll take them all home, and that's the other part of Fall Harvest. So thank you again for coming. Give everyone a big round of applause.